Jimin breaks down on live podcast when asked about Jungkook's soulmate. His raw, unexpected answer stuns the room and leaves fans in silent shock. "Don't ask me that," Jimin whispered, but the mic caught it, every syllable quivering, drowning in a hush so thick you could hear hearts breaking. The studio lights buzzed above like indifferent gods, casting a cold glow on Jimin's trembling hands. The host blinked, lips parted, unsure whether to speak again. The moment had cracked the room open like a fault line, delicate, irreversible. This was supposed to be a celebration, a reunion podcast with BTS members returning after years of hiatus, careers diverging into acting, solo albums, and near-total silence. But no one expected this. No one expected him to fall apart at a question so seemingly harmless. "So," the host had said, leaning in with the naive warmth of someone unaware they just stepped on a landmine, "Jimin, the fans keep asking, who do you think is Jungkook's soulmate? A joke, perhaps? Or curiosity?" But Jimin froze. First his hands, then his breath. His eyes locked not with the host, but with the floor, his expression folding into itself like a paper bird dipped in rain. He tried. Failed. Swallowed. Then the tears came. Not the dramatic kind. Not cinematic streaks for effect. They were quiet. Hesitant. The kind of tears that don't want to be seen but can't stop falling. The kind that carry weight because they come from somewhere buried, dark, and unspoken. The silence after was louder than applause. The host, clearly rattled, tried to pivot, but Jimin raised his hand. He needed to speak. "You don't understand." His voice cracked. "People think we're just a story. A fantasy they can write themselves into. But Jungkook, he's not just someone you matchmake with hashtags." His voice dropped, lower now, like confession. "There was someone. There is someone. But you didn't ask the right question." The host stammered, reaching for a tissue, maybe for himself. Jimin shook his head slowly, his wet lashes catching the studio light. "You asked who his soulmate is. But you never asked who lost theirs." There it was. A truth sharp enough to bleed. The sound guy behind the glass whispered something into his mic, probably asking if they should cut. But the producer held up his hand. "No. Not yet." Jimin looked up, into the camera now, into the void of millions watching live, their breaths caught in throats. "You want an answer? Fine." His soulmate was someone he chose. Someone who chose him back. But not every love gets to survive the storm it meets. His fingers gripped the edge of the table. "I watched it happen. I watched him fall in love and then I watched him walk away from it. And I couldn't do a damn thing." The host, pale now barely audible, said, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to." Jimin just smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was weary. Like something in him had finally cracked. "It's okay," he said softly, eyes already far away. "No one ever does." In the quiet that followed, the sound of the air conditioner became a symphony. Outside the glass booth, one of the camera crew turned away, wiping his eyes. The host reached out as if to comfort Jimin, but thought better of it and pulled back. There was nothing to say now. Not yet. Not when the ghost of Jungkook still haunted every corner of Jimin's voice. The podcast ended in a hush, the screen fading to black with a single line typed across it, flashing only for a second. Episode 2, What He Left Behind. But for now, all that remained was the echo of what was never meant to be spoken. "Are you ready to talk about him?" The question floated into the dimly lit room like smoke, slow, curling into every corner, impossible to ignore. The camera had barely started rolling and already the tension hung heavy in the air. Jimin didn't answer right away. He was seated on the same velvet chair from the first podcast, the same glass of untouched water by his side. But this time his posture was different, less guarded, more resigned. His fingers traced the rim of the glass absently, as if drawing invisible maps of a place he never wanted to revisit. "I don't think I've ever stopped talking about him," he said eventually, his voice low, measured, tinged with something bitter. Even in silence. The new host, a seasoned journalist named Yena, leaned forward. She wasn't there to play nice. Her approach was known to be surgical. Unflinching. This wasn't about fan service anymore. This was about truth. "You say talking," Yena pressed, her gaze sharp. "But in last week's episode, you left the world hanging with more questions than answers. Who was Jungkook's soulmate? Why did you cry? And what did you mean when you said not every love survives the storm?" Jimin's jaw clenched, just slightly. "You really want to know?" he asked, more to himself than to her. "Fine. But you don't get to unhear it." The room felt smaller suddenly, as if shrinking around him. "It started in Tokyo," he said slowly. "During the tour. We had a night off. Jungkook and I went walking, just the two of us. No bodyguards. No fans. Just two idiots trying to be normal. It was freezing, but he insisted on finding some hole-in-the-wall ramen shop. He laughed the whole time. God, he laughed like he had no weight on his back. And then, Jimin paused, his mouth twitching like the memory stung. He asked me if I believed in soulmates. Yena blinked, stunned. He asked you that? Yeah, Jimin said with a bitter chuckle. Out of nowhere. Said he felt like he'd met someone he couldn't get out of his head. Someone unexpected. Off limits. He looked up, meeting Yena's eyes. You have to understand something about Jungkook. He's not careless. He doesn't fall easily. He overthinks everything. But that night, he looked like a man drowning and hoping I'd throw him a rope. Yena's lips parted. So, who was it? Jimin didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took a breath so deep it made his shoulders rise. Then he said flatly it was someone on the team. Not a member. Not staff. Someone who shouldn't have been there. Someone who wasn't supposed to be real. Yena frowned. You're talking in riddles. No, Jimin said. I'm talking in consequences. He leaned back, eyes distant now. Her name was Seo Mira. She was a ghostwriter. Came on for a documentary project. Quiet. Brilliant. And married. The room went dead silent. Jimin continued, voice firmer now. She wasn't looking for anything. Neither was he. But there was this spark. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. They hid it well. We all pretended not to see it. Until we couldn't. Yena, clearly trying to keep composure, asked, Are you saying Jungkook had an affair? Jimin's jaw twitched. I'm saying he fell in love with someone he never should have touched. And that love changed him. Did it change you? She asked, her voice softer. His answer was immediate. Yes. Because I was the one who covered for him. Yena's face froze. I lied to the management, Jimin said. I lied to the press. I lied to the other members. I lied to myself. For months. He sat forward now, intensity pulsing through him. You know what it's like to watch your best friend disintegrate from the inside while pretending everything's fine? To watch him write songs no one ever hears, burn letters he never sends, drink until he forgets what day it is, and still smile for the cameras the next morning. The room was suffocating with unspoken truths. And then Jimin said, voice cracking, he ended it. Yena blinked, stunned. Why? Because she was pregnant. The words dropped like shrapnel. Jimin looked away. It wasn't his. But that didn't matter. He loved her. But he let her go. Silence. Jimin's hands were trembling now, but he didn't try to hide it. She chose her marriage. Her child. And Jungkook, he just stopped being Jungkook. There was a long pause before Yena whispered, and where is she now? She died, Jimin said, not blinking. Complications during childbirth. Jungkook found out a week later. He didn't show up for rehearsal. I found him in his apartment. Alone. Drunk. Crying harder than I've ever seen anyone cry. He closed his eyes. And that night, he said, voice barely audible, he told me she was his soulmate. And he'd never believe in happiness again. Yena sat back, visibly shaken. You think you know someone, Jimin said, quieter now. But grief changes people. He smiled less. He wrote darker music. He fought with management. And one night, after another silent dinner, he asked me if I thought souls could break. Yena's voice cracked. What did you say? Jimin looked at her, eyes glassy. I told him no. But I was wrong. He looked down, finally lifting the glass of water to his lips. And then he left. Not the group. Not Korea. Just me. Yena hesitated. Left how? He stopped talking. We saw each other, sure. On stage. In meetings. But it was like a wall had come up. And one day I realized I wasn't looking at Jungkook anymore. I was looking at what was left of him. The silence was unbearable. And now Jimin said, barely above a whisper, you want to know who his soulmate is. But maybe that's the wrong question. He looked directly into the lens. Maybe the question should be, who do you become when your soulmate dies and it's your fault they ever lived that pain? Yena wiped her cheek and this time didn't hide the tear. Why are you saying all this now? She asked. Jimin paused. Then he said, because I've carried the story alone for 5 years. And grief needs a witness. There was a beat of silence before Yena said, thank you, Jimin. But he only shook his head. No. Don't thank me. Just remember him better than the headlines did. The screen faded to black. Text scrolled across, slow and deliberate. There were only 2 cigarettes left in the box Jungkook had forgotten he even owned, tucked behind the loose brick under his apartment balcony. Jimin found it at 3:12 a.m., the cold night air slicing his skin as if punishing him for coming back here. Again. He hadn't smoked in years. Neither had Jungkook. But tonight, nothing mattered anymore. The wind carried with it the scent of the Han River, sharp and metallic. Below, Seoul slept in silence. Only the hum of a distant taxi engine and the ghost of a forgotten voicemail lingered in the air. Jimin's thumb hovered over his phone screen. One new message. Sender, unknown. 3:07 a.m. He's not safe anymore. You were warned. He didn't need to ask who it was about. The last time Jungkook was seen in public was 8 days ago. 8 days since the podcast went viral, dissected frame by frame, voice inflection by voice inflection. Fans speculated everything: Jimin's tears, Jungkook's absence, the cryptic words about Seo Mira. But no one knew what came next. No one except Jimin. Because Jungkook had sent him a voice note at 2:11 a.m. the night he vanished. Don't follow me. Please. If you do, they'll come for you too. He hadn't said who they were. But Jimin already knew. Back then, there were whispers, contracts buried in silence clauses, secret payments, shredded footage from the documentary Mira had ghostwritten. Management denied everything, of course. But the truth doesn't vanish. It festers. Jimin lit the cigarette with shaking hands, inhaled smoke he hated just to feel it burn. His phone buzzed again. New message, coordinates. No text. He memorized them instantly. He was already out the door. The warehouse near Incheon looked abandoned. But the music playing from inside, soft, melancholic piano notes on loop, told a different story. Jimin stepped in cautiously. The air inside was stale, thick with mildew and something sharper, blood, maybe. Memory. His boots crunched on broken glass. Every step echoed like a scream. At the far end of the room, a single spotlight fell on a chair. And in it, Jungkook. But not the Jungkook the world remembered. His face was hollow. Bruises darkened his jaw and temple. His wrists were bound to the chair, duct tape frayed at the edges as if he'd tried hard to break free. His lips were cracked. Dry blood streaked his shirt. Jimin's voice broke when he whispered, "Kook." The eyes that looked up weren't empty. They were alive. Furious. Alive. You shouldn't have come, Jungkook rasped. I had to, Jimin said, running forward, falling to his knees, already pulling at the tape. What the hell happened? Who did this to you? But Jungkook didn't answer. He just stared past Jimin to the shadows moving behind him. Too late. They were already here. The steel door slammed shut. A voice rang out from the darkness, measured, calm, far too familiar. Well, loyalty. Still your most poetic flaw, Jimin. Park Taehyung stepped into the light. Jimin froze. The world spun. Taehyung? He whispered. What are you? But he couldn't finish the sentence. Because behind Taehyung came 3 men in suits, their faces blank, unreadable, masks of power. One of them held a black folder. The other a gun. Taehyung's smile was sad. Regretful, almost. I told him not to dig, he said, nodding toward Jungkook. But he couldn't help himself. And now here you are, like always, trying to save what's already broken. Jungkook struggled in the chair. Don't listen to him. Jimin, get out. Now. I'm not leaving you. Taehyung sighed. Then you're going to learn what truth costs. The man with the folder stepped forward, opened it, and dropped the contents onto the floor. Photos. Dozens of them. Jimin picked one up with trembling fingers. Seo Mira. Pregnant. Jungkook by her side. Another, Mira and Taehyung. Hugging. Crying. Then Mira. Alone. In a hospital bed. Hooked to wires. Dying. And then. Another photo. Taehyung. In her hospital room. Alone. His hand over her heart. Jimin's breath hitched. What is this? He stammered. What did you do? I gave her peace, Taehyung said, his voice like ice. I loved her too, you know. Before either of you ever did. The silence shattered. Jimin stood slowly, the photo slipping from his fingers. You killed her. Taehyung's eyes burned. She was suffering. And I made it stop. The world tilted. Jungkook screamed something incomprehensible. Jimin surged forward, fists raised, but the man with the gun stepped in, aiming straight at his chest. Don't, Taehyung said quietly. Jimin's voice cracked. Why hide all this? Why destroy him? Because secrets feed the machine, Taehyung said. And BTS stopped being about music a long time ago. We became gods. And gods aren't allowed to fall in love with mortals. Jimin laughed, short, sharp, furious. You're insane. No, Taehyung said, eyes glinting. I'm free. He looked at Jungkook then. But he couldn't let go. He kept her alive. In songs. In dreams. In rebellion. He stepped closer, whispering now. And that's why we had to make him disappear. Jimin's body shook. You were our brother, he said, each word like a stone. I still am, Taehyung whispered. That's why I'm giving you a choice. He raised 2 fingers. 1, you walk away. Forget this. Tell the world Jungkook went off-grid, lost to grief. We spin it. Control the narrative. Keep the legacy clean. He raised 3 fingers. 2, you fight us. You leak the truth. And we destroy everything, your name, your history, your future. He looked directly into Jimin's eyes. What will it be? Jimin looked at Jungkook. Bloodied. Broken. But still breathing. Then he looked back at Taehyung. And without a word he knelt beside Jungkook, took his hand, and squeezed. The gesture said everything. I choose him. The man with the gun cocked it. Taehyung didn't stop him. But Jungkook did. With a sudden burst of adrenaline he kicked the chair backward, breaking the leg off with a sickening snap. The distraction was enough. Jimin lunged. The gun fired too late. The bullet hit the ceiling. Chaos exploded. Jimin shoved the gunman back. Jungkook was dragging himself across the floor. Sirens outside. Someone had called them. Or maybe it was fate. Taehyung didn't move. Even as the doors burst open and officers flooded in. Even as the world collapsed in flashing red and blue. He just watched them go, sadness etched across his face like prophecy. As Jimin helped Jungkook into the ambulance, he looked back only once. Taehyung stood under the warehouse light, arms raised, surrendering not to the law, but to something deeper. Regret. The doors shut. The sirens screamed. Jimin held Jungkook's hand, blood and tears staining their grip. Stay with me, he whispered. Please. Jungkook's eyes fluttered. I'm still here. Jimin smiled through the ache. For now, he said. Outside, dawn was breaking. And somewhere, in the cracks of their shattered story, hope flickered again. The applause was deafening. But it wasn't real. The sound echoed like a ghost in Jimin's ears, bouncing off the backstage corridor walls of Gocheok Dome as he stared into the mirror. Stage makeup masked the new shadows beneath his eyes, but nothing could hide the truth carved into the tight lines of his mouth, the tremor just beneath his skin. The comeback was tonight. Not for BTS, the world had stopped calling them that long ago. The name lived on in brand deals, tribute documentaries, and TikTok edits, but the soul of it, the blood of it, had bled dry. Tonight was Jimin's solo stage. A tribute concert. A eulogy in disguise. A lie wrapped in neon lights. Somewhere beneath this very stadium, in a private hospital ward hidden from the press, Jungkook lay sedated. His body recovering. His mind not. The official story, exhaustion, overwork, retreat from public life. The real story? Taehyung had nearly destroyed them both, and now he was in a high-security psychiatric facility, silent since the arrest. No visitors. No bail. No closure. But his voice lived on, in Jimin's nightmares, in hidden memos leaked to an underground fandom archive, in the song Jungkook had managed to record before everything unraveled. And that song, that unreleased final track, was the closing piece of tonight's setlist. The one Jimin was never supposed to perform. He stood now, hands braced on the vanity table, head bowed, breath coming in sharp, ragged pulls. The door creaked behind him. 10 minutes, came the stage manager's voice. Jimin didn't answer. From behind the doorframe someone else appeared, someone no one expected. Namjoon. He looked older. Thinner. Grayer at the temples. But his presence filled the room like it always had, composed, steady, burning. Jimin turned slowly. You came. I shouldn't have, Namjoon replied. But I had to. Silence stretched. Then Jimin asked, quietly, did you know? Namjoon didn't flinch. Not everything. Not then. But enough to hate myself now. Jimin nodded once. So it was real. Namjoon stepped closer, stopping a foot away. It was all real? Jungkook. Mira. Taehyung's obsession. The cover-ups. The blood on the walls. He paused. But so was the music. So was the love between us. It wasn't all poison. Jimin's throat tightened. Does it matter anymore? Yes, Namjoon said. Because tonight, they'll try to rewrite everything. Again. They'll sell your pain back to you in pretty packaging. Tell you to smile. Bow. Be the good idol. But if you go out there and sing that song, I become a threat. You become truth. Jimin stared at him, something trembling in his hands. They warned me, he whispered. They said if I performed Jungkook's song live, they'd make sure he never wakes up. That they'd finish what Taehyung started. Namjoon's voice hardened. And what if staying silent kills him anyway? Silence again. Then the sound of something cracking, Jimin's resolve, or maybe just the dam behind his eyes. He stepped back to the mirror, wiped the smear of liner from his cheek, and reached for the earpiece. What if I sing it wrong? He asked. What if I can't survive it? Namjoon looked at him deeply. Then at least you'll die with your own voice. The lights dimmed across the dome. The stage manager whispered into the earpiece, opening cue in 5. You're live, Jimin. All feeds connected. Global stream online. No delay. Jimin nodded once, shoulders squared. As he walked down the dark tunnel to the stage, memories pressed against his chest like broken bones. Jungkook laughing on hotel balconies. Myra's voice behind the camera feeding them interview questions. Taehyung handing him water on a training day long before the madness. And then, Taehyung screaming in that warehouse, "You were never supposed to survive this." Jimin stepped into the light, and the world screamed. Flashes blinded him. Voices chanted his name. But when the first notes began, slow, trembling piano, raw and exposed, the noise melted. This wasn't a concert. It was confession. He sang the opening verse like a man unraveling. His voice cracked once, then again. But he didn't stop. And when the chorus came, the line Jungkook wrote in his blood and silence, Jimin sang it straight into the soul of the world. "If I vanish, don't remember my name, remember who I became trying to love." People gasped. Some wept. A few turned away. But others leaned in, gripped by something ancient. Truth. The live chat exploded. Hashtag uncensored Jimin. Hashtag Jungkook was real. Hashtag Mira didn't he die alone. Hashtag Taehyung knew. The network tried to cut the feed. Failed. The servers were hacked by fans, maybe. By someone else. Maybe by Jungkook himself if he'd planted that failsafe before his mind went dark. Security rushed the side stage. Too late. Jimin dropped the mic on the final note. And said into the silence, "Now you know." He walked off stage without bowing. In the wings, Namjoon was waiting. "They're going to kill your career," he said. Jimin smiled, tears falling freely. "Let them." From his hospital bed, Jungkook stirred for the first time in 6 days. His fingers twitched. His lips moved. And across the monitor, the heartbeat monitor beeped, steadier now. Stronger. He was coming back. Outside, in a press room flooded with panic, one journalist opened an anonymous file leaked mid-performance. It contained everything. Emails, photos, contracts, and one final unreleased video. Taehyung, speaking to the camera. "If this is ever found, it means I've lost. But maybe that's okay. Maybe this ends with truth, not silence. I loved her too. I just didn't know how to let go." The screen flickered, then died. The journalist hit publish. And the world would never be the same again. The night air in Seoul tasted of something electric, half thunder, half revolution. Every screen in the city was alive. Subtitles rolled. Faces flickered. Voices screamed and whispered in overlapping waves. A moment that had once been confined to music, fandom, and memory had erupted into something else, something far more dangerous. Truth. Jimin had disappeared the moment he stepped off stage. No car. No security. Not even his own manager knew where he'd gone. It was intentional. The plan had always been to vanish after that performance, but not even Namjoon knew the full extent of what was coming. The streets were packed now, not with fans, not with media, but with a new kind of movement. Candles. Posters. Projectors flashing, "Where's Jungkook?" on the side of skyscrapers. The incident was no longer just a fandom scandal, it was political, cultural, seismic. Governments were demanding answers. Former staff members were deleting accounts. Entertainment conglomerates were issuing legal threats and veiled apologies in the same breath. And at the heart of it all? The man no one had seen for days. Park Jimin. But he wasn't missing. He was watching. From a narrow alley tucked behind a shuttered Hanok bookstore in Jongno, he stood with his hood pulled tight, eyes flicking between the passing cars and the screen of his burner phone. He'd already changed locations twice in the past 24 hours. The network watching him, watching them, had ears in every agency and eyes behind every contract. But what they didn't have, what they never saw coming, the coded drop he had scheduled for midnight tonight. A full unreleased documentary. Myra's documentary. The one no one knew she'd kept a second cut of hidden, encrypted, and stitched together with passwords known only to Jungkook, Jimin, and Mira herself. The final truth. Jimin opened the app. The countdown read, 7 minutes and 21 seconds. 7 minutes left until the upload began, pinging servers in 37 countries, including those outside corporate jurisdiction. He had to make it to the safe house before then. But as he turned the corner, a hand yanked him back. A blade flashed. Then a voice. "Tell me it was worth it." Jimin's breath caught in his throat. Because the man holding the knife was Yoongi. His eyes were hollow, cheeks gaunt, and his voice shaky, not from fear, but fury held too long in silence. "You don't get to play martyr," Yoongi hissed. "Not after dragging all of us back into this hell." "Put the knife down," Jimin said, steadying his voice, but his eyes never left Yoongi's. "Not until you tell me what the fuck you're trying to do." Jimin breathed slowly, watching the steel glint inches from his chest. "You think this is about me?" he said. "I'm trying to make sure Jungkook lives." Yoongi flinched. "He was living," he said. Quietly. Under the radar. The deal was made, the silence was bought. We all paid the price and we moved on. "No, you moved on," Jimin snapped. He never did. He stopped being human just to protect everyone's illusion of peace. And what did we get in return? A corpse with a heartbeat. Youngi's hand shook. You think I don't live with that guilt every day? That I don't wake up hearing Myra's voice? Watching her die again in my sleep? Then help me, Jimin said, voice low, softening. Don't stop me now. Because it's already happening. He showed Jungi the phone. 2 minutes and 43 seconds. Youngi's eyes widened. You didn't. I did. And if they come for you? Jimin's voice broke. Then let them. I'm done running. Jungi looked at him a long time. Then lowered the knife. You're fucking insane, he said quietly. Maybe, Jimin replied, slipping past him. But so was she. They ran. Together. Across rooftops, through shadows, ducking under neon signs and leaping over rusted fences. The city blurred beneath them. And with every step, the weight of what was coming sank deeper into their bones. At midnight, the file dropped. Across the world, people clicked. And they saw. Mira standing in front of a mirror, her voice recorded in secret. If you're watching this, then I didn't make it. But Jungkook did. He made it through hell. They tried to erase him, twist the truth, turn love into betrayal. But he stayed kind. He stayed himself. And that should have been enough. Cut to a hospital corridor. Jungkook holding her hand. Cut to Taehyung pacing, muttering numbers, page numbers, coordinates, something indecipherable. Cut to a recording from inside a board meeting, executives discussing a containment narrative. Cut to Myra's final confession. He never asked me to choose him. But I did. Every day. Even when it broke me. Even now, if you're listening, I chose him. The internet detonated. 10 million streams in 30 minutes. Hashtags overtaking international headlines. Fanbases uniting, not in celebration, but vengeance. Old clips resurfaced. Audio breakdowns analyzed. Former bodyguards came forward. And at the center, still unconscious, still in recovery, was Jungkook. Until he wasn't. His fingers twitched again. His lips moved again. This time, a word. Mira. He opened his eyes. Back in the safe house, Jimin dropped to his knees in front of the screen. A live feed had started broadcasting from Jungkook's hospital bed. Not authorized. Not planned. A nurse, one of theirs, must have activated it. Jungkook turned toward the camera. His face gone. Hair matted. Eyes bloodshot. But alive. And he said, I remember. The line echoed around the world. Jimin sobbed, shoulders shaking. Youngi stood behind him, jaw clenched, tears in his eyes. It's not over, Youngi said. No, Jimin whispered. It's just beginning. And somewhere, behind bars and silence, Taehyung smiled in the dark. Because not all ghosts haunt. Some wait. And some burn everything down before the truth can live. The moon hung over Seoul like an accusation. It wasn't the full moon, nothing so romantic. It was a cruel, sharp crescent, thin as a razor, slicing through the clouds. From the rooftop of the Namdaemun Medical Center, Jimin stood in the wind with his hoodie drawn, staring out at the skyline like he expected it to answer him. Somewhere below, across layers of concrete and steel and security guards, Jungkook was awake, breathing, watching the storm his name had set loose upon the world. It had only been 48 hours since the drop of Myra's final documentary, but the world already felt unrecognizable. The media had turned on itself. Former executives were subpoenaed. Idol culture, the engine that made gods out of fragile boys, was under fire from all sides. Fans were rioting and praying in the same breath, laying candlelight vigils outside of hospitals and leaving lyrics etched in red ink on the front doors of their agencies. And BTS? The legacy was being rewritten in real time, not by corporations, but by the boys themselves. Namjoon had called an emergency meeting, a real one, all surviving members. No staff, no lawyers, no cameras. They met in the underground rehearsal studio in Gangnam, the same one they had used a decade ago before everything turned golden and heavy. Jimin walked in first, then Yoongi, then Seokjin, fresh off a redeployment notice he'd quietly ignored. Then Hoseok, who hadn't posted a photo of himself in 3 years but still looked like fire in human form. And finally, Namjoon. He looked different now. Less like a leader, more like a prophet whose hands had finally started shaking. The kind of man who knew every system was crumbling, and who no longer feared the rubble. They sat in a circle without chairs. No greetings, only silence, until Seokjin finally said it. Where's Taehyung? Jimin's jaw tightened. Where he belongs. No, Namjoon said calmly. Where we put him. Silence again. Yoongi leaned forward, voice sharp. You want to talk guilt, let's talk about yours. You knew about Mira. About the board. About the money. I didn't know about the death. Namjoon snapped. I didn't know they were going to kill her. But you knew they were going to silence her. Jimin shot back. Namjoon nodded. Yes. No denial. No defense. Why didn't you stop it? Hoseok asked, his voice quieter. Why didn't we? Namjoon looked down. Because we were gods. Jimin's lip curled. We were kids. No, Namjoon said. They called us kids. But they treated us like weapons. They trained us to be worshipped. To manipulate grief. To disappear behind smiles. And we played the part. All of us. Even when it started killing us. His voice cracked. Even when it killed her. Jimin stood suddenly. Too fast. His chair clattered to the floor behind him. I didn't fucking play, he said, pointing at himself. I burned. I bled. I begged you all to see what was happening to him. And none of you moved. Yoongi rose next. Don't pretend like you were the only one carrying him. You just did it louder. Jimin turned on him. And you? What were you doing while Jungkook drank himself into blackout silence every night? Writing music, Yoongi said. The only thing that didn't lie to me. Then maybe you should have written a suicide note too. The room froze. Jimin flinched. But he didn't take it back. Namjoon exhaled. We can fight each other for the rest of our lives, or we can tell the truth. The whole truth. Together. Why now? Seokjin asked. Why not back then? Namjoon looked at him. Because now the lie has a name. And it's Taehyung. At that, Yoongi's shoulders tensed. You still think he did it all alone? No, Namjoon said. I think he did what the system bred him to do. I think he broke because he was never taught how to feel without turning it into a performance. I think he was in love with both of them, Jungkook and Mira, and didn't know where to put that love. He chose murder, Jimin said. He chose madness, Hoseok added. And we let it happen. Jimin's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again. He finally looked. Private number. Redacted prison facility. He stared at the screen. Then he answered. A female voice spoke. Mr. Park. Inmate 7274 has requested an audience. Taehyung? He breathed. Yes, but only you. 1 hour. No recorders. Jimin didn't reply. Then, I'm coming. The prison smelled of bleach and ghosts. Jimin sat alone on one side of the thick glass partition. He hadn't eaten. He hadn't slept. The air was cold enough to numb his fingertips. But the chill had nothing on what walked through the steel doors. Taehyung, shackled, pale, lips split from a healing cut. He moved with grace even in chains. Like a fallen monarch who still knew how to sit on a throne. He took his seat. And for a moment neither spoke. Then Taehyung whispered, You sang his song. I did. It was beautiful. Jimin studied him. Why now, Tae? Why speak now? Taehyung smiled faintly. Because for the first time in years, someone listened. You murdered Mira. Taehyung looked down. No, I watched her die. And I didn't stop it. You could've. She asked me not to. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was dense. Cracking. Jimin's voice trembled. Why would she ask that? Because she was in pain, Taehyung said. Because she was tired. Because she didn't want Jungkook to carry her forever. Because she loved him. And you, Taehyung's eyes flicked up. Loved her enough to let her go. Jimin shook his head. You loved her selfishly. You let her die so she wouldn't choose him again. Taehyung's lips parted. I don't know. Bullshit. Maybe I wanted them both to suffer, he whispered. Maybe I wanted the story to end. You ended everything. I ended myself. Silence. Then Taehyung leaned forward. But it's not about me anymore. You're not here to punish me. You're here because you need something. Jimin swallowed. I need a name. Taehyung nodded. They call him Director E. He was the shadow behind the mirror. The one who approved every silence clause. The one who ordered the footage destroyed. Is he still alive? Yes, Taehyung said. And he's watching. Even now. Jimin stood slowly. Then I'll make sure he sees me coming. As he walked away, Taehyung spoke one last time. Tell Jungkook. I'm sorry I broke the ending. Jimin didn't turn back. He didn't have to. The car was waiting outside. Inside sat Namjoon, Yoongi, Hoseok and Seokjin. No managers. No stylists. Just ghosts who had finally chosen to become men again. Jimin climbed in. Namjoon looked at him. Did he give you what we need? Yes. Yoongi started the engine. Seokjin cracked his knuckles. Hoseok opened the glove compartment and revealed a USB. Let's end this, he said. And for the first time in a decade they were not BTS. They were brothers. Going to war. Together. There is a silence before a revolution. The kind that doesn't announce itself with drums or gunfire, but with breath held too long, with glances exchanged in crowded rooms, with a single click echoing through a cavernous server hub hidden beneath Gangnam. That click came at 3:17 a.m. And with it, the last firewall of the industry's deepest vault crumbled. A decade of erased files, sealed reports, private correspondence, payoffs, edits, redacted contracts, and recordings once thought to be buried forever. All of it flooded onto a private server controlled only by 5 men. Not idols. Not anymore. Jimin, Namjoon, Yoongi, Hoseok, Seokjin. They called it Project Mirror. The irony was deliberate, because for years they had been reflections of what the world needed them to be, of what management sculpted, of what fans dreamed. Now they were done showing people what they wanted. Now they would show them what was. In the corner of a darkened studio-turned-command center, the 5 of them sat around a round table. No windows, no staff, only screens. Maps lit up in pulsing red. Hashtags flashed and mutated in real time. And at the center, one thumbnail of Jungkook. Alive, but still too quiet. His recovery had plateaued. His memory came and went in waves, sometimes strong enough to hold a conversation, sometimes blank as ice. He couldn't recall the moment Mira died, but he woke up screaming her name, over and over. Jimin had stopped trying to leave the hospital. He sat beside him most nights, whispering the lyrics they never recorded. The ones they wrote in silence in stairwells on napkins during tours, as if music could become oxygen. But tonight, he wasn't by Jungkook's side. Tonight, he had returned to the room where everything would either be exposed or destroyed. Namjoon leaned over the keyboard. This is it. Once we drop this, there's no going back. Lawsuits, blacklists, possible arrests. Yoongi cracked his neck. Then let's make it count. Seokjin exhaled, fingers twitching. What if we're wrong? Hoseok looked at him sharply. Then at least we were brave. Namjoon turned to Jimin. You have to say it. Jimin blinked. What? Namjoon's voice was quiet, but commanding. You started this. You were the one who stood on stage, who lit the match. If we're gonna set this whole system on fire, you say the words. Jimin stared at the screen, the blinking cursor, waiting. He took a breath, deep, final, and then he spoke. Execute Mirror. The upload began. In every major city across the globe, the screens changed. Billboards, phones, laptops, tablets. People commuting, people asleep, people praying, people grieving. And suddenly, they all saw. The first thing that played was a leaked boardroom video from 2022. Executives, strategists, financial controllers, talking about her, about Mira. She's gotten too close to the subject. We need to control the output. Anything emotional, cut it. What about the footage with Jungkook? If it leaks, we bury them both. And if she talks? Then she won't talk again. Next came the security camera footage. Taehyung standing outside Myra's hospital room. The moment she died. The nurse watching. The syringe. Yoongi's whispered lyrics. She left us in silence, but the silence was loud. The press tried to halt it. Governments tried to censor it. Labels panicked. Lawyers flooded news outlets. But it was too late. Fans became whistleblowers. Former staffers came forward. Journalists who had once feared for their jobs now risked everything. Anonymous hackers launched satellites of mirror servers. Even political leaders, once indifferent, made public statements calling for criminal investigations. Jimin sat still the entire time, watching the machine that made him burn. But it wasn't enough, because the heart of the monster hadn't been cut out yet. And that heart had a name. Director E. The phantom behind the system. The man Mira had tried to expose before she died. The man who erased Jungkook's life with a penstroke and a bribe. The man who was still out there. And they finally had a location. He had fled to Switzerland, Zurich. A safe haven for the rich and morally bankrupt. So they followed. Every one of them. No handlers. No staff. No announcement. They arrived unmarked. Disguised. They rented a warehouse on the industrial edge of the city. A private investigator, a former bodyguard, and a hacker who used to tour with them joined forces. Together, they tracked Director E to a penthouse apartment, monitored by 4 levels of private security, underground garage entry, retina scanners. They watched him for 3 days. He never left. He didn't need to. He had people for that. But he didn't know. They still had people too. The plan wasn't elegant. It was angry, desperate, insane. But it worked. They breached the apartment on the 4th night. Silent, swift. Jimin entered first. Face pale, eyes like steel. Director E didn't reach for a gun. He didn't scream. He just looked up, startled. As if he'd forgotten the dead could walk. "You," he said, blinking. "You're still standing." Jimin nodded. "And you're still breathing." Director E smiled. "For now." Namjoon shoved him into the chair. "Why?" he asked, voice sharp. "Why bury her? Why destroy him?" Director E didn't answer right away. Then, "Because you were never supposed to last." "What?" Seekjin asked. "You think the world needed 7 kings forever? You were a marketing campaign, designed for shelf life, designed to die beautifully." Yoongi stepped forward. "You killed people. I protected an empire. You murdered a woman." Jimin spat. "You butchered Jungkook's soul. You turned love into collateral." Director E looked at him calmly. "And yet, here you are. Famous. Immortal. Remembered." Jimin punched him. Hard. Blood. Silence. The others didn't move. Director E chuckled, spitting crimson. "Go ahead. Make me the villain. But you'll find someone ready to replace me tomorrow. There's always another machine. Another god to build. You're just the first to fall." Jimin wiped his hand. "Then we make sure no one builds altars like this again." They didn't kill him. They didn't have to. They left him tied, gagged, and surrounded by hard drives loaded with every document, every recording, every wire transfer and photo Mira had ever hidden. An anonymous tip was sent. Interpol arrived 6 hours later. The headlines exploded. EX Idol executive arrested in global music industry scandal. BTS members shock world with massive whistleblowing operation. Myra's documentary named as evidence in international court case. And in a small hospital room back in Seoul, Jungkook sat up for the first time. A nurse handed him a phone. One message. From Jimin. "It's over. Come home when you're ready." Jungkook stared at the words. Then typed. "I never left." The trial would take years. The music industry would fight to regain control. But the Mirror project was complete. And in the center of it, 5 voices that had once harmonized on stage, now screamed truth into the void. Together. Not for applause. Not for charts. But for her. For Mira. For themselves. And for every broken dream that deserved to be seen. The courtroom was too bright. Too clean. Too quiet. It smelled of polished marble and sterilized history. Like the kind of place built not to deliver justice, but to perform it. The kind of place where truth didn't echo. It was suffocated beneath legal lingo and forced civility. Jimin sat in the witness box, his spine stiff against the straight-back chair, palms pressed to his knees like they might tremble otherwise. A dozen cameras were trained on him. He could hear the static hum of a global audience holding its breath. He knew every blink, Every word, every stutter would be dissected by millions. He looked to his left. Namjoon, Yoongi, Hoseok, and Seokjin sat in the front row of the gallery. Silent, tense, unmoving. Their faces bore the weight of a decade's worth of silence. But they were here. Behind them, Jungkook sat in a wheelchair. He wore a simple black hoodie. No brand, no logo, no makeup. His hair was a little longer now, curling at the edges. His face thinner than it used to be, a little hollower. But his eyes dark, awake. Here. He nodded once. Jimin looked forward. The prosecution cleared their throat. Mr. Park, for the record, please state what you found on the encrypted file marked Mira 0411A. Jimin leaned forward. Her final statement. To whom? To Jungkook. But also to us. To the world. She didn't want revenge. She wanted understanding. She didn't ask us to burn the industry down. She asked us to stop letting it destroy people quietly. And what did the footage show? The real order to silence her. To suppress the footage of her with Jungkook. The plan to leak fabricated statements about her mental state. Signed off by Director E and 3 executives. And the justification? Jimin's voice darkened. That love, true, painful human love, was a threat to the brand. A murmur rippled through the room. The defense stood. Objection. That's speculative. Sustained. The judge said. Mr. Park, stick to observed fact. Jimin nodded. The documents speak for themselves. But the truth is, we were trained to perform grief, to package it. We were told to cry on cue, mourn in silence, and never let the audience know when something real was happening behind the scenes. But Mira didn't play by those rules. She told Jungkook he was allowed to feel something real. And that made her dangerous. And what about Taehyung? The prosecutor asked. Do you believe he acted alone? Jimin paused. Then, no. A silence bloomed like a bruise. I believe Taehyung was broken, but not evil. I believe the system infected him with silence until he didn't know where the lies ended and he began. The judge nodded. That will be all. As Jimin stepped down, his gaze locked with Jungkook's. Neither of them said a word. They didn't have to. Later, on the rooftop of the courthouse, with helicopters circling above and wind lashing at their coats, the 6 of them stood together again. All of them, including Jungkook. He walked without assistance now. Slowly, carefully, but with fire in every step. Do you think it'll change anything? Seokjin asked, leaning on the railing. No, Namjoon replied. But I think we did. Yoongi lit a cigarette. For the first time in years, no one stopped him. We should have burned this system down a long time ago. We weren't ready to, Hoseok said quietly. We didn't know how to live without it. But now, Jimin asked, watching the clouds roll over the skyline. Now we don't have to live without it, Jungkook said. We get to build something after it. The wind carried his voice, stronger than it had been in weeks. He looked at Jimin. I remember the night she told me she was pregnant. I remember thinking I'd die if I lost her. And when I did, I thought I had. But she didn't die to make me a ghost. She died believing I'd survive. Jimin nodded. You did. Jungkook stepped forward, pulled something from his coat. A notebook. Tattered. Worn. Old. He handed it to Jimin. She wrote this for you, he said. Pages I never read until now. She said. You needed to remember who you were before they told you who to be. Jimin opened the notebook. Page after page in Myra's handwriting. Lyrics. Notes. Little sketches of them laughing during tour rehearsals. A drawing of Jungkook asleep with a lyric written beside it. He sings to silence, and silence listens. Jimin blinked tears from his eyes. I can't. You can, Jungkook said. And you will. That night, in an abandoned theater they once performed in before their debut, they returned. Not to perform, but to remember. Namjoon brought a speaker. Yoongi brought a laptop. Jungkook brought his voice. And Jimin? He brought the last song they'd never finished. It was a simple progression. Piano, a whisper of strings, a steady heartbeat of percussion. No filters, no reverb, just breath and truth. Yoongi hit record. Jimin stepped to the mic. And as the first note left his lips, everything slowed. The years, the lies, the loss, the fire. And in that sacred space, where no one watched but the ghosts of who they used to be, Jimin sang the last thing Mira ever wrote. If I vanish, don't find me in echoes. Find me in the voice that dares to remain. His voice cracked, but he didn't stop. Neither did the others. One by one they added their voices. No harmonies, just pure, raw, unpracticed unity. And somewhere between the chords, the pain, and the rebirth, the sound that had survived everything finally found peace. The track leaked a week later. Accidentally, maybe. No credits. No names. Just labeled. For her. The world knew exactly who it was. But no one needed to say it. Because sometimes truth doesn't need applause. It just needs to be heard. And when it is, it never dies. The apartment in Apologi was silent when Jungkook arrived. Not empty. Just quiet in that haunted way only old memories know how to be. The kind of quiet that made your ears ring. He stood in the doorway for several seconds, still as a statue, suitcase in hand, breath shallow. He hadn't been here since before it all fell apart. Since before Myra's last message. Before Jimin's voice shattered the world in a single performance. Before Taehyung's name stopped being just a name. He stepped inside. Still smelled like jasmine and ash. Like her. His footsteps were slow, careful, like he feared breaking the floor with every move. He passed the mirror in the hallway without looking into it. That reflection didn't belong to him anymore. He stopped in front of the piano, covered in a dusty sheet. It waited like a buried secret. His fingers trembled as he lifted the fabric and let it fall to the floor. Beneath it, the keys gleamed faintly under the flickering city lights outside the window. He sat. One note. Soft. Hollow. Another. The melody didn't come, because she wasn't there to complete it. He closed his eyes, until, behind him, a voice broke the stillness. I was wondering when you'd come back. He turned sharply. Jimin stood in the doorway, leaning on the frame, a paper bag in one hand and that familiar, infuriating softness in his eyes. You have a key? Jungkook asked. Had it? Jimin replied. You never changed the locks. Maybe I didn't want to. Maybe you didn't think you'd survive to return. Silence stretched between them, the distance longer than the apartment itself. Jimin walked forward, set the bag on the counter, and pulled out 2 cans of coffee from a convenience store. He tossed one. Jungkook caught it. They sat across from each other, the city flickering behind them, 2 souls exiled from the kingdom they once ruled. She'd hate all this, Jungkook said. I think she'd be glad the truth lived, Jimin replied. Even if we didn't. Jungkook studied him. Did we live, Jimin? I'm still trying. Jungkook opened the can, took a sip, then said, You know it's not over, right? Jimin didn't blink. I know. They found another one. What do you mean? There's another ghostwriter. One of Myra's old team. Name's Choi Dana. She reached out to Yoongi. Said there's still a vault. Full archive. She's been hiding it in pieces. She's terrified. Of who? Jungkook's jaw clenched. Who else? Director E was just the tip. There's a syndicate behind this. Bigger than labels. Tied to funding, politics, even military assets. You think they let someone like Taehyung fall alone? Jimin sat forward. How do you know this? She sent a voice note. Coded. Said she'd meet us in Busan. Then we go. No, Jungkook said. I go. You stay out of this now. Jimin stood. Don't pull that again. I'm serious. You already burned yourself for me once. You think this is about you? Jungkook looked down. I think I'm the reason they keep dying. You're not. She died because she loved me. She died because someone made her choose silence. You didn't ask her to. I didn't stop her either. And you're going to fix that by running alone again? Jungkook didn't respond. Jimin leaned closer. If you leave without me, I'll follow you anyway. And just like that, the argument ended. Busan was raining. Not hard. Not dramatic. Just steady. The kind of rain that sinks into your bones. Jungkook drove. Jimin sat in the passenger seat, scanning a handwritten note with coordinates and half-ripped symbols only someone from their world would understand. They reached an abandoned cinema by the docks at midnight. A figure waited under the awning, soaked, shaking, eyes darting at every sound. Choi Dana. She looked like sleep hadn't touched her in months. Her hair was matted, her eyes wild with the kind of paranoia only truth can infect someone with. You brought him? She asked Jimin. He brought me, Jimin answered. Dana held up a flash drive. This has the vault index. If I give this to you, you don't own it. You inherit it. Which means everyone that's been hunting me will now be hunting you. Jungkook took it. What's in it? He asked. Her eyes flared. Everything Mira was about to publish. The backdoor deals. The fan-targeting AI algorithms. The idol conditioning facilities. Jimin blinked. Facilities. She nodded. Children. Teenagers. Groomed in total isolation. Given names. Histories. Trained in mimicry. Language. Emotion. Shipped to agencies at 15. Engineered for stardom. Or silence. Jungkook's voice cracked. That's not real. Then you don't know who you were singing for, Dana said. Or what we were building behind you. They were interrupted by a sound. Glass breaking. Then another. Shouting outside. Flashlights sweeping. Run, Dana whispered. Jungkook grabbed the flash drive, shoved it down his sock. Jimin pulled Dana by the wrist. They ran through the emergency exit, down alleyways stinking of old seaweed and rust. Shots rang out, real ones this time. Not staged. Not fake. Someone wanted the vault gone. Permanently. They made it to a fishing warehouse just as headlights caught up to them. Jungkook slammed the steel door. Jimin bolted it. Dana sobbed against the wall. Jungkook turned to Jimin. We need to get this out tonight. Jimin pulled out his phone. Namjoon's waiting. Server's hot. All we need is a clean channel. Dana looked up, soaked and shaking. Once it's out, they'll come for you like they did for her. Jimin crouched beside her. Then we fight back like she never had the chance to. The upload took 37 minutes, during which 5 black cars surrounded the warehouse. Namjoon's voice came through on speaker. Jungkook, you sure? No. Then I know it's right. Youngi's voice followed. I've already wired backups. If they kill us, our ghosts will scream louder than we ever did alive. The door burst open at 38 minutes. But it was too late. The files were gone. Already copied. Already mirrored. Already unleashed. The footage made headlines in 132 countries. The AI files showed how companies had developed psychological profiling on fans to engineer dependency, emotional cycles, parasocial manipulation, even social withdrawal. The idol training documents confirmed the existence of camps across multiple nations. Names were redacted, but the voices weren't. Survivors came forward. The industry bled. And BTS, the fractured, ghosted, crucified myth of a band, became a movement. Not of fame. Not of music. Of truth. One that couldn't be silenced again. Jungkook returned to the stage 6 months later. Not for a tour. For a single show. No pyros. No backtrack. No encore. Just him. A mic. And one seat beside him left empty. A spotlight hovered over it. The fans wept before he even sang. Then he spoke. I didn't come back to be a star again. I came back to remember someone who told me I was more than a song. He looked out. She saved me. He saved me. You saved me. And now I want to sing something for her. He closed his eyes. And began. A new song. One that had never been released. Titled, The Girl Who Told the Silence to Listen. And the world did. There was something sacred about the way early morning light hit the old studio walls, gold streaks through cracked concrete, soft enough to forget the years, sharp enough to remember everything that had been lost. Jungkook sat cross-legged in the center of the room, barefoot, his black hoodie pulled around his shoulders, a spiral notebook open in his lap. It was the last surviving one Mira had filled, the final pages he hadn't dared to read. Not until today. The page he stared at was blank. Just her name in the corner. No ink. No lyrics. No closure. Only the sound of her absence, humming louder than any melody ever written. Behind him, the door creaked. Jimin didn't knock. He never had to. You started without me, he said gently, placing a thermos of coffee on the dusty piano bench. I didn't know how to begin, Jungkook replied, not turning. That's the whole point. There's no right way to start a story you were never supposed to survive. Jungkook closed the notebook. Is it really over? He asked. Not rhetorically. Genuinely. Jimin walked over and sat beside him. That depends. Are we? There was silence for a long while. Then Jungkook said, they offered me a deal. What kind of deal? They want to frame it as a cultural reckoning. Corporate repentance. They'll donate. Create scholarships. Launch a healing campaign. And in return? I walk away quietly. No memoirs. No press. No music. They want me to vanish. Jimin leaned his head back against the wall. They're afraid of your voice? They should be. Jimin looked at him then. Really looked. You don't have to disappear again, Jungkook. I know. But I don't want to fight forever. I'm tired of being the war. You're not the war. You're the reason it's finally ending. Jungkook looked down at his hands. She used to say that silence was never empty. It was just full of things no one was brave enough to say. Jimin reached into his coat and pulled out a small black recorder. What's this? Something she left with Yoongi before she died. He didn't find it until last week. Was buried under his vinyl collection. He didn't listen. Said it was yours. Jungkook stared at it. Then pressed play. Myra's voice filled the room. If you're hearing this, I must have run out of time. But not courage. This isn't a goodbye, Jungkook. I hate those. This is a dare. I dare you to keep feeling. To keep singing. To find the sound between grief and peace. I never wanted to be your silence. I wanted to be the space you fill with your truth. Jungkook froze. His breathing broke. Jimin didn't speak. And to Jimin, thank you. For guarding what the world tried to erase. For believing that the most fragile things could be holy. You saved more than him. You saved me too. The message ended with static. Then nothing. And that silence. It wept. Jungkook pressed the recorder to his chest and sobbed, not for show, not for redemption, but for release. For the boy he'd been before the stage. For the girl who taught him how to love. For the man he was still becoming. When the tears passed, he spoke. I'm ready. To record. Jimin asked. To remember. The archive of the unsaid wasn't a physical place. Not at first. It was an idea. Jungkook and Jimin founded it quietly without fanfare or branding. No launch. No press. No Instagram. Just a room. And a mic. And a seat across from it where anyone, idol, trainee, staff, fan, could sit and speak. Anonymous if they wanted. Raw if they needed. They opened the first session with Yoongi. He walked in, nodded, sat down, and said, They told me I was a genius. Then they told me I was replaceable. The truth is, both were lies. What I really was scared. I composed to survive. But every beat I wrote was a heartbeat I borrowed. Then came Fanfiction. He said, I don't miss the fame. I miss the innocence. The way we used to laugh in stairwells before shows. The way Taehyung used to hum when he didn't think anyone was listening. The way Jungkook used to look at Mira like she was air. Hoseok followed. They made me dance until I forgot what stillness felt like. But I learned something. Stillness doesn't mean stagnation. It means choice. I'm finally learning how to be still. Even Taehyung sent a recording from his psychiatric ward. His voice was thin, but lucid. I remember everything. That's my curse. I remember the first lie, the first song, the first time I realized I loved them both. I thought if I couldn't have either of them, no one should. I was wrong. They deserved each other. I hope they forgive me one day. I don't expect it. But I hope. They published the archive unlisted. But people found it. Because truth always does. Within weeks, submissions came flooding in. Former idols. Backup dancers. Producers. Fans. Everyone had something unsaid. And the sound of it? It changed everything. Jungkook stood on a cliff overlooking the ocean 1 year later. Myra's ashes had never been found. Her family kept her funeral private. There was no gravestone. No place to mourn. But she lived in the wind. In the notes that lingered. In the silence between lyrics. Jimin walked up beside him, hood over his head, hands in his pockets. You ever wonder what she'd say if she saw this? Jungkook asked. She wouldn't say anything, Jimin replied. Jungkook raised an eyebrow. She'd just hand you a pen and wait. Jungkook smiled. Then reached into his coat and pulled out a folded sheet of music. Jimin unfolded it slowly. 4 bars. No lyrics. Just a title. The sound that survived. What is it? Jimin asked. Jungkook turned toward him. It's not a single. It's not an album. Then what? It's the beginning. He handed Jimin the pen. Write it with me. And in that moment, with salt air on their lips, grief softened by time, and the sky bleeding orange and gold above them, they did. Together. Not for charts. Not for fame. But because when silence ends, a song begins. And this one was theirs. Forever. The ocean had always whispered to her. Not the way it whispered to others. Not sweetly. Not with lullabies or lullaby metaphors. It whispered like it was hiding something. Like it remembered everything she had buried. Mira stood barefoot on the shore of Jeju Island, her coat pulled tight against the wind, her eyes rimmed red from the cold, or maybe the grief. Or maybe something else. Because she wasn't dead. Not really. And everything they thought they knew was about to collapse. Again. 16 months earlier, inside the final hours of her pregnancy, she had signed a document she never fully read, one pressed into her trembling hands by a man with a badge and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. We can protect him, he'd said. But only if you disappear. She had laughed through the tears, breath ragged between contractions. You want me to vanish? We want the story to end. Her heart had shattered in two ways that night, one for the child that didn't survive and one for the truth that never would. But the moment she had signed, they moved fast. Changed her name. Falsified her death certificate. Injected her with something that made everything blur into softness and sleep. And when she woke up, she wasn't Mira anymore. Not legally. Not publicly. But privately? She remembered everything. Especially Jungkook. Especially the way he said her name like it wasn't a word but a promise. And she remembered Jimin. The way his hands had shaken when he handed her the last song draft. The way he always stood closest to the edge like he wasn't afraid of falling, just afraid of not jumping when he should have. She had watched them from afar. She had seen the trial. Heard the leaked voice memos. Felt the world spin into chaos and clarity. She could have spoken then. She could have torn it all open. But she waited. Not out of fear. Out of precision. Because timing, she had learned, wasn't just everything. It was truth. And now, she was ready. It started with a video. Anonymous. No credits. No logos. No title. Just a black screen. Then her voice. You thought the story ended. But endings only matter to the people who live through them. To those of us erased, endings are just silence. And I'm done being quiet. The world didn't believe it at first. Even Jimin, watching it in a cafe in London, choked on his tea and said nothing for 10 full minutes. Even Jungkook, staring at her face, older now, scarred, thinner, reached out to touch the screen as if it might be real. And then she said it. My name is Seo Mira. And I never died. They buried me because the truth scared them more than a corpse ever could. She agreed to meet Jungkook alone. No cameras. No microphones. No press. They met at dawn in the same temple courtyard they once walked through during the Tokyo leg of a winter tour. She wore a black scarf. He wore his heart on his sleeve. When he saw her, his knees almost buckled. Am I dreaming? He asked, voice raw. If you are, she said, then I'm dreaming too. He stepped forward. Slowly. Cautiously. Like one wrong move might shatter the moment. I held your necklace when I thought you were gone, he whispered. Every night. I kept your voice, she said, touching the small recorder she wore around her neck. Every day. They didn't cry. Not at first. They just stood there. Two ghosts who had never stopped loving each other. Then he reached out. And she didn't flinch. And the hug that followed was not a reunion. It was a resurrection. The rest of the world lost its collective mind within hours. Jungkook vanished again, this time with her. The archive of the unsaid became the most trafficked digital space in South Korea. And the corporations? The ones Mira had warned against? They panicked. Because this wasn't just a scandal now. It was a return. And her return meant something deeper. She hadn't come back for closure. She had come back with names. Actual names. People in office. People in power. She had receipts, contracts, recorded conversations, location logs. And she had plans. She released a public manifesto. It read like scripture and rebellion mixed together. They wanted to own our voices. To turn our pain into currency. But we remember. And remembering is rebellion. She launched an initiative called Reverb, a platform that allowed survivors, whistleblowers, even fans to submit anonymous stories with proof. Within days, the site crashed. Within weeks, arrests began. People who once sat behind press conferences now sat behind bars. And yet, she wasn't finished. Jimin found her again under the lanterns of a small Buddhist festival, a soft smile on his face, a hard edge in his voice. You should have told me. I couldn't, she said. If I had, you'd have given everything. And I needed you to save him first. He exhaled, jaw clenched. You don't get to carry everything alone. I do when it costs lives. You're not God, Mira. She looked away. I never wanted to be, she whispered. But they made me a myth. And I figured if they were going to worship me, I might as well burn down the temple on the way out. Jimin didn't speak. Then, after a beat, are you happy? No. Are you alive? She looked at him. And smiled. Yes. That was enough. Taehyung saw the news from his room. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He simply turned toward the window and whispered, good. Then asked the nurse for a pen. He began writing again that night. No one knew what. Only that it made him breathe easier. The last song Mira ever wrote was never meant to be sung. It was a confession. A letter. Jungkook recorded it anyway. Not in a studio. But on a beach. With one mic. And the sea behind him. It played only once, live, on a satellite channel with no reruns. He didn't say her name. He didn't need to. The final lyric was enough. I loved you past memory. Past death. Past silence. I love you still. And then he stopped. He looked into the camera. And simply said, we're not your idols anymore. We're your mirror. And we remember everything you tried to forget. Then the screen went black. No outro. No merch. No comeback tour. Just truth. And that was louder than any encore the world had ever screamed.